The best way to do that in a biomechanical context is like adding some load to it.
Yep.
That's where neurotraining is really great in the gym. Is I can go into the gym and feel like stiff and out of sorts and have some pain going on from sitting all day or whatever else. I go in there and I do a couple drills and it's like, whew, boom.
Right.
They're just a part of my warm up and my nervous system is amped up. Like I'm warmed up, I'm ready to go. And like my range of motion, my joints feels great, right? I have no pain. I have opened the door, to use your term, to performance.
Right.
Now I'm ready. I've got good range of motion. I'm ready to lift some weight. And now that I've aligned things a little better by balancing out my nervous system, now I add some load on it. That's going to make it stick even faster.
Welcome to the Strength Connection Podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences in strength, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm Michael Krukowski, host of the Strength Connection, and I'm so grateful that you can join me today. So in these episodes, I connect with some of the most inspiring and successful individuals to chop it up and learn from true life experiences that have helped them become who they are, the strongest versions of themselves. One of the greatest ways I've always learned the most important lessons is through stories. We all have them, and they make us who we are. So let's dive in. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Strength Connection Podcast. Brandon Day, thanks so much for joining me, man. I'm grateful to have you.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a mutual friend in our buddy Joe. Joe, shout out to you. I absolutely love you. And the work that I've heard about Next Level Neuro, of talking with Matt, and then seeing your work you do of combining it with flow state as well as the neuro, I think it's such a fascinating topic as a coach, because as I said, like so many things, especially in health and fitness, seem like they're geared towards the beginning stages, like tactics and strategies, but without really understanding the science of the neurology that's going on behind it, it's kind of, we can only get to like that limited, strongest version of ourself. And that's where I think the work that you do and the work that I've seen with Matt is really tapping into that next level for people. So yeah, I'm excited to really hear about your journey and all the work that you do with the neuroflow method, and just really have a great conversation today.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So how'd this all kind of kickstart and start for you? Like, how did you first get into the world of coaching? What was the first modalities that you were working with?
Yeah, great question. And alluding back to your earlier point about finding that next level, and as neurology is kind of really the foundation, it was a long roundabout journey for me to get to there, to that point. But it all kind of started for me back in college. I played football at a college up in Montana, and we were, at the time that I played there, we were pretty good. I played in 3 national championships in my time, in my 4 years there. We won 2 of them, lost our final one, but we had a culture of excellence that was very special, and we kind of knew at the time that it was special. That word got thrown around a lot.
Right.
But until we left, we didn't really know how good we had it, right? And all the things that were cultivated in that culture really came to light when we look back on it. And so through that experience, I left with kind of this like yearning for finding something like that could kind of fill that void in terms of the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the trust in each other, and just playing on a team that was at that high of a level, right? To be that successful. I mean, we were, in my 4 years, we won 53 games or 54, and we lost 3.
Okay.
Right. We were pretty dominant. And in order to maintain that level of success, right, it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard work, and some luck too, right? There's a lot of special sauce that we didn't really know how to explain it. I found out much later it was group flow, right? It was the experience of everybody being on the same wavelength, like literally. Our brain waves are like synchronizing, right?
Right.
Which we
Did you know that culture like going in there, or that's something that you
Oh,
felt
the
immediately?
culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Because I knew the culture. I knew that there was something cool about it. And I was pretty successful athlete in high school, all state both ways, MVP of the state on the defensive side of the ball. I had offers to go to some D1 schools, Oregon and BSU and some others in the area, ASU down here in Phoenix too.
Mm-hmm.
But they were, walk-on offers. A kid from, that was a little undersized from Montana. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we don't know. Come on
Football's
down.
tough, right? They look at the metrics, right? With
They definitely do, yeah.
Mhm.
And I didn't fit that perfect mold. Not quite tall enough, not quite fast enough, But they're like, you got some spark here, buddy. So we'll try it out, right?
Mhm.
In a way, I felt a little bit slighted by that.
Sure.
But I went to this place called Carroll College, which was a smaller school, very small, 1,200 kids in my hometown, which is like the last place I wanted to be for college.
Mhm.
But they had this like culture of winning. At that point, they had just won 3 back-to-back national championships.
Mhm.
Okay. And so I had some older guys that I knew from my high school that went there. And I'll never forget, I went on my recruiting trip to that school, Carroll, and the older classmen, they just took me in. They just took me in, and it was just so different than any experience I had had at any other school. That's what made my decision. And it was not an easy decision, but I was like, you know what? Like these guys, there's something special going on here, and they like, they want me there.
Mhm.
It was very clear that they were so welcoming and so great to be around that I was like, it kind of made it an easier decision. And
Mhm.
it turned out to be, best decision ever.
Yeah.
We went on to, play in 3 more, win 2. I ended up on the cover of Sports Illustrated when I was a junior after our national championship win, which was just a wild experience.
Gotta be a fun day.
Oh man, it was nuts. But that culture that they had bred there was unmatched, right? You see it occasionally, but at that consistent level for that long, it's a really rare thing. So
Mhm.
much later on, I discovered flow states, and that was that magic sauce that we had had. We didn't know how to define it, but we knew once it was gone that something was missing. And you lose a lot when you end a sport, especially like football, that you can't just go out and play anymore. There's no
Right.
pick up tackle football games. Not that I would even want to be involved in them anyway, right?
Right.
But that level of attitude and camaraderie and trust in each other, that ability to have something greater than yourself that you're all striving for, that you show up and you sacrifice for and do the work every day, that being kind of ripped away as well as the identity that you had wrapped up in this sport, this thing for so long, right? It's a tough thing when it gets taken away. And so I spent a lot of time searching for something that I didn't know that was flow that could fill that gap. And
Mm.
then my journey really took me down more of the traditional path first. Coming out of football, I had a whole lot of injuries. I had bad knees. I had sprained ankles like a dozen times on each side, right? Back pain. I had a pretty bad stinger my senior year in my neck that, led to chronic neck pain and headaches. And there came a point in my mid 20s where I really started to notice some mental health and behavioral health kind of weird things that were happening, like becoming really impulsive and aggressive and angry, which is
Mm.
not my personality at all, right? There were some definite changes that were going on that made me really afraid, actually, for the health of my brain. And so I started diving deeper into that. And at that time, I was starting my personal training career, which, to be honest, was just a job for me because I knew I had done some strength coaching in college, and
Mhm.
I studied some of that in my undergrad. But it was just a job to pay the bills while I was trying to, make
Sure.
movies
Mhm.
because, that's what you do after college is you go make movies, right? So I did that for 5 years with some
Mhm.
buddies and had some great experiences there. But by the end of that run, I was pretty broken down, physically in chronic pain, out of shape, 30 pounds overweight, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. My lungs were torched.
Mhm.
And my mental health and just the health of my brain was just really declining. So I decided to make a change, started doing some personal training, to pay the bills, and really discovered a passion for helping people fix their kind of orthopedic type injuries. So I
Okay.
started going down the corrective exercise route.
Hmm.
I ended up going back and getting a master's degree in kinesiology with my focus on orthopedic rehab. And then I started working in physical therapy, built some wellness programs in physical therapy, worked with their patients, really taking those traditional kind of biomechanical routes.
Hmm.
But there was always something that was just kind of missing. And it wasn't doing the job to help me get rid of my own chronic pain. It would help initially, right, for a little bit, and it would always come back,
Hmm.
whether it was stress induced or just overworking. And we always had these just biomechanical solutions for it. Do more corrective exercise,
Hmm.
try some body work, right? Do some chiropractic, whatever.
Some band-aids.
Yeah, trigger point injections, like
Hmm.
we have all of these things that now I would consider neck down approaches, right? Body first traditional approaches. And they have their place and they're great.
Yep.
But I just was finding that there's sneaking suspicion that there was like some kind of like master key that we were just missing out on. And so I started studying the brain a little bit more. And in 2015, around there, I discovered the work of a guy named Stephen Kotler, who, if you haven't heard of him, he's a best-selling author, and he started out as an investigative journalist following action adventure sport athletes and the rise in their ability to do the impossible in such a short period of time and then come out and do it again. Like, I remember watching the first backflip on a motorcycle.
Hmm.
And then within like a month, somebody did a double backflip.
Right.
It's like, how does that gap work? Like, what? We went from, 60 years of just like putting around
Hmm.
to a crazy backflip. And then within a month, we're at two. How does that happen? So he was studying all that, and he wrote some great books about it. And, long story short, he stumbled upon the work of a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi out of the University of Chicago, and what he had coined like flow states.
Yep.
And that was like my first big like aha moment. Like, wow, that's what I had. That's what I've been missing. That's what gave my life meaning and purpose, right? I need that back. And the neurobiology of the flow state is what I really started diving into. I did some of their courses that they had provided and learned a lot about how to add more flow into my life and find it in different areas that I wasn't really even aware I could find it. And I started helping people with that. The next big revolution for me in my own health and training was discovering applied neurology with Next Level Neuro, who you've had on before with
Hmm.
Matt Bush and Kathy Mock. And they really gave me that master key to unlocking not only my own chronic pain and really giving me the tools to deal with all that, but giving me that master key for all of the other modalities that I have studied in the past 15 years or so, the ability to connect them all together. All the bodywork methods that I know and use, all of the corrective exercise methods and modalities, all the strength training, things that we've been taught, they all are governed by the nervous system. And so if we can understand that, and once I fully started to dive deep into the brain and the nervous system and intentionally training it, all those other modalities just started to work better.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And my own chronic pain and physical health, turned around and really started to exponentially get better. And
Hmm.
beyond that, like all the other great things that come with it, like I enjoy working more. I
Yeah.
enjoy all the things that I'm doing outside of
Hmm.
the gym, and being able to really improve my own mental health, and all of that is a function of better brain function at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So
It is. It's the nervous system. It's a big word for a lot of
mm,
people of being like understand that, because like what is going there's so much that's going on there from the brain to the spinal cord to the CNS and stuff like that that it almost can
mhm,
seem very daunting. Where the biomechanical route, it's almost a not an easier path, I would say, but just almost more of like a straightforward path of corrective exercise. Which, as you said,
yeah,
I think there's times and places to do that, and it can get you, definitely some momentum of going down that beneficial route. But what you said there that I thought was so interesting, Brandon, was about that group flow that you had,
Yeah.
and then leaving it. It almost made me think of like Sebastian Junger's work with Tribe, like when
Mm.
you go through like something together with somebody, and you can see that a lot with teams, but or military and stuff like that, going through battle together. And
Mhm.
there's a weird like euphoria and connection that you have, and that really comes from that connection of the mind. It's not just the body, but it's that connection of one mind to another, and you see that, and you almost don't realize that until you're away from it and you realize that something was missing from there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. And love Tribe by
Mhm.
Sebastian Junger. Great, great book. And it describes it in an extreme way, but you're 100% right. And that's one of the things that really brings people together is, I mean, for lack of a better term, trauma,
Mhm.
right? And those people that he studied in that book in the Bosnia Serbia conflicts, they look back on those moments as some of the most intensely powerful and joyful moments
Mhm.
that they experienced with other people in the most horrific conditions,
Yeah.
in blown out buildings, like not sure if they're going to even make it through another day. And they come together. And that's a really powerful, what we would call a trigger for flow, especially group flow, is this shared experience of something very risky in a way.
Mm.
One big trigger for flow is risk.
Right.
So flow follows focus. And when we are in a high stakes scenario, we get focus for free, right? Our mind just goes
Yeah. Yep.
like we need to focus on this right now for our survival, right? So you're going to get all those good neurochemicals like
Mhm.
norepinephrine and dopamine that are going to drive attention and focus and block out all other distractions that are erroneous and don't matter,
Mm.
right? Except the task at hand. This is why action adventure sport athletes are so flow prone and why they get so addicted to that sport and always pushing the boundaries,
Mm.
because it's that risk that just allows them quick
Right.
and easy access to flow and that next level performance that they need in order to make it over that gap, or to land this and not run into the wall or the
Right.
tree,
Right.
whatever else.
Yeah.
The experiences in war, or in my case, like going to battle against another team, right?
Right.
Those are somewhat similar in that they are risky in a physical way, right? And I try to hesitate about
Right. The
comparing
comparison.
war to
Yeah. Mhm.
football,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
was the mindset that we
Yeah.
had.
Mhm.
And if you mess around and aren't paying attention, like you can get injured
Mhm.
pretty good. But anyway, it's that mindset that brings us together of going to battle. Now, the cool thing is that risk doesn't have to be just physical risk. And
Right.
one of the best examples of that is like public speaking,
Mhm.
right? That risk that you're experiencing there is more of a risk to reputation, we might say, or the risk of being ostracized from the group.
Mhm.
Because we know that's a really powerful innate drive, is to be a part of a group,
Mhm.
evolutionarily for our survival. We get ostracized, we're not going to survive that long on our
Right.
own.
Mhm.
So using, that as a trigger can like allow you easier access to flow. And there are many others that we can look at to
Yeah.
provide more.
What you said there, like when the risk is high, we get focus for free.
Mm,
That's such an interesting line right there, because you think about the guy trying to do a backflip for the first time. Like, of course you're going to be focused at that time, because if you're not, it's detrimental consequences that are
yeah.
going to come. It's one of my coaches and mentors, Fabio Zone. I've told this story before, but he talked about building the skill of strength, and he said when you step up to a bar with a weight on it that is your max or you've never lifted before. He's like, of course you're going to be focused at that time, because if you're not, the bar's not going to move. You don't need to amp yourself up for like a focus at that time. Kind of similar. But building the skill is, can you get that same focus when it's half that weight on there, when you know that you can actually do it without having to focus, but you still put that same respect and that same focus on it. That's where the skill of strength develops. So it's kind of an interesting, comparison of going on, because I'd ask you, like, in football, it's a really good example of it, because when you're in a game situation, I would assume it's easier to get in that flow state there, because like you need to win the game, like because you want to get to the next level. But then when you're going into practice, it's much easier to fuck around at that time or just like play around. Was that a difference that you saw of that group flow? Like, were you guys in that same mentality, like in practice, as same as the game? Was that something that you recognized once you got past that?
Man, that's a great question, because there was a clear difference many times between games and practice. And, the old adage is practice as you play, right? Be as close to game scenarios and context as you can in practice if you want to do your best in a game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's only true part of the time, because you can't go game speed all the time.
Right.
It's not feasible, especially in football. Like, if you're hitting each other full speed all the time in practice, you're going to have a bunch of injuries and it's too risky. So what I believe was a really important factor in our success in college was the ability to turn it on when we needed to in practice. And we had specific times every week that we did that, like Tuesday, Wednesday, and a little bit on Thursday. We had specific periods of our practice where it was go time.
Okay.
It was as close to game speed as we could get while still being safe, right? But
so yeah, like triggers to go.
Exactly. Yeah. And the rest of the time, we weren't like half-assing it, but there was a certain element where allowed for more play, like playfulness, right? Allowed for more creativity. Right, trying different things and being fun with each other and building like the bonds and all that. I think our coaching staff did a really good job of fostering both kind of ends of that intensity spectrum, we might say. But when it got down to it, they were old school and they were hard asses when it came to getting the work done.
Right.
At the end of the day, just like in the gym, you got to put in the work. You got to get the volume that you need in order to grow and adapt.
Right.
So, and the nervous system works the exact same way. It's all about the said principle, right? Specific adaptations to impose demands. You got to do the thing. You got to do it correctly with great form, great technique, with enough intensity in order for the system to adapt. So you take that part of it, and if you can add in the playfulness part of it, especially as you get the repetitions in and it becomes less of a cognitive demand and more of an automatic program, right? Then you're getting towards that like unconscious competence,
right,
stages of learning, right?
Yep.
To where it becomes easy and flowy.
Yeah.
Right?
That's such a beautiful point. It's so interesting because there's a lot of Taoist principles that go on in that, like with the yin and the yang. It's like that yin energy, which is more of that flowing, that kind of like playfulness type, and then you switch it over into the yang, which is that divine masculine, that dominant type side. And it's like both sides are good, but neither of them work well without the other one. So you kind of said, like, as you said, like having that trigger of, okay, we know this is time to push it and go forward, but then we have the other flip side of it. We have the playful side where it's a little bit more open. And I think where you've probably heard this before, but I've seen it a lot this year with people who are like, I'm an all or nothing person. Like if I need to go, I'm like, well, what are you right now? Are you all or are you nothing? And
Yeah.
it's definitely, it's this mentality that we see a lot, especially in the fitness realm and the physical side of it, of like the way to push the boundaries is to go higher intensity, and you need to push it, and every day is game day, no days off, whatever hashtag else you want. But
Yeah. Right.
you can also apply that to, it doesn't need to be the intensity of the weight on the bar or the volume of the exercise that you're doing. It could be dialed up on the mental side of it, you know, of putting
Mhm.
that focus in while changing it up. So I wanted to add to that with like that yin and yang principle applies so much that's going on here, not just on the physical side,
Yeah.
but the neurological and the flow side of it as
Yeah.
well. So when you talked about with your chronic pain and then you found neuralgia and that really helped you a lot, did you already have a lot of this pain in your playing days, or did a lot of it come up afterwards once you were out of that arena and more into kind of like the next level of life into adulthood?
Yeah. I dealt with pain every day
Yeah.
through it started actually around puberty and just before with some emotional type trauma that from I had from my childhood. And that's about the time that my eyesight started getting really bad and I started experiencing pain. Like I had bad knees and a bunch of different ankle sprains early on. And then that just like went I that followed me,
Mhm.
you know, until the day I stopped playing. And then I had a short amount of time where I didn't have as much pain because I wasn't really moving too much, right? But then it started to come back. And when it came back with a vengeance. And it wasn't so much in my knees and stuff because I wasn't running as much, but it started showing up in my lower back because I was sitting more. It started showing up a lot more in my neck and in my head, getting headaches and a lot of neck pain from the injury that I experienced in college and from many hits to the head. But more so than that, what I didn't know then, but I do know now is that number one, pain lives in our brain. It's specifically an output of the brain in response to what we call threat, from our environment.
Mhm.
We take in inputs from the environment, both internal and external. Our brain interprets those inputs, tries to integrate them, and then it will give you an output based on that perception of threat. So if we have a lot of different threats that we're experiencing, and over time we kind of accumulate those things, previous injuries, faulty movement patterns that create muscle imbalances, these kind of things, as well as higher neurological problems like visual issues or vestibular dysfunctions. It could be past traumas that are unresolved, that are we tend to dissociate, or more of these, we could say, psychological or mental health type issues, but they all really, there's no separating the mind and body, as you
Right.
know. So if the brain perceives these things as threats, we're going to get a protective based output or a threat response. And that can be anything, that is meant to protect us. It could be pain. That's a great one that we see often. It could be anxiety or even depression. It could be autoimmune type issues, gut issues, any of these things that are, in a way, the brain's response to help us protect. Say you eat a food that your body thinks is a threat, your brain perceives it as a threat. It's going to give you gut dysfunction or
Mhm.
GI distress in order to kind of tell you, hey, don't eat that again,
Right.
dummy. I didn't like that,
Right.
right? In that way, a lot of my pain was not due to structural issues. It was more due to this overload of threat on my system. So, long story short, I discovered that I had serious vestibular dysfunctions from being hit in the head a lot.
Mhm.
And so I'm walking through the world, and this side of my vestibular system is just like not getting the activation it needs. So I'm trying to compensate over here.
Mhm.
So in order to do that, my brain thinks that as I walk through the world, it thinks I'm falling over.
Mhm.
So it's going to compensate by tilting my head just a little bit. But I don't really want to walk around like this because now my eyes are off, right? That doesn't really
Mhm.
make sense. So
Yeah.
my brain and my body come up with this elegant solution to just raise this shoulder up and twist my
Mm.
spine a little bit. And so my head's neutral but now I'm cockeyed here.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's good enough. We can now walk through the world and feel level, right? Like we're
Hmm.
not going to fall over all the time.
Yeah.
But after just a little time of doing that, stuck in that position, you're going to start to feel the effects of it, some tightness in the
Hmm.
neck, right? This is actually one of the ways that kids develop scoliosis.
Yeah.
So there's over time, form follows function. So this functional change that my nervous system and brain are using to compensate for the dysfunction up
Hmm.
here over so many reps of just walking around the world and loading that pattern, it just gets stuck that way, you
Right.
know?
And
And
I would always look at that like just growing as a biomechanical issue, that there's an
yeah,
issue with the shoulder, this an issue with the chest, and we need to correct on that. But
mm,
what happened, what you realized is it wasn't anything the biomechanics was a consequence of a
yeah,
neuromuscular issue going on, a
kind of
vestibular issue.
a symptom of the root cause,
Hmm.
which is more of the vestibular issue.
Hmm.
So, the discovery of for me of applied neurology and
Hmm.
adding that into my own personal training. When we started learning about the vestibular system and I started doing some of these vestibular drills, it was as crazy as like one drill where I'm like moving my head quickly through space to activate this one
Hmm.
underactive side. Neck pain, gone.
Yeah.
Just gone. Of where it's been there like for weeks. And
Yeah.
so I'm, what the, what is happening?
Yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
voodoo stuff that I
Yeah. It's still challenging in many ways, from my own experience, to like for something so instant in there to change. It almost seems like it's some magic pill, and where I think
yeah,
we're naturally a skeptical species, to look at things that work so instantly. Like there's a scam,
yeah,
there's a trick of something that's going on in here. And I remember
yeah.
when Matt said, like, the thing about neuro training is it's instant results that you see from there.
Hmm. Yeah. It's instant and it seems like snake oil,
Yeah.
especially if you don't have a lot of experience or you don't fully understand it yet, which is
Hmm.
which is fine. That's fine to have that healthy amount of skepticism.
Hmm.
And I still have clients to this day. Like I
Sure.
have them do some drills that we know work for them, and it's just like snake oil. They still call it snake oil, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. Just keep doing it. I don't care what you call it. Just do it. But to your point, that instant change is amazing and incredible, but it doesn't last. Like remember, form follows function. So
Hmm.
we're getting an immediate functional change, but those threats are still going to come back, and your body is going to revert back to the mean, so to
Hmm.
speak, right? So that pathway of compensation that's been worn over time, it's easier, faster, and more efficient for the brain to use that than it is to try to do this new thing
Hmm.
that you just taught it. So it takes a lot of repetition
Yep.
for the structural change to solidify,
Right.
to the brain to actually change its wiring, so to speak,
Hmm.
and keep that new brain pathway and pattern as the default.
Right. Okay. So kind of so we're opening the door to say, yeah, this is possible to fix this, and we're going to see that really quickly. If you want to get it
Yeah.
to stick afterwards, okay, here's the repetition. Here's the work that we need to
Yeah.
do. Hmm.
And the best way to do that, in a biomechanical context is like adding some load to it,
Yep. Hmm.
right? So that's where neurotraining is really great in the gym is, I can go into the gym and feel like stiff and out of sorts and have some pain going on from sitting all day or whatever else. I go in there and I do a couple drills and it's like, whew, all right, boom.
Right.
They're just a part of my warm up, and my nervous system is amped up. Like I'm warmed up. I'm ready to go, and like my range of motion, my joints feels
Mhm.
great. Right. I have no pain. I have opened the door, to use your term, to performance.
Right. Hmm.
Now I'm ready. I've got good range of motion. I'm ready to lift some weight. And now that I've aligned things a little better by balancing out my nervous system. Now I add some load on it. That's going to make it stick even faster.
Right.
And the cool thing about the nervous system is it's the most plastic system of our body. So whereas like muscles take a while to adapt, bones take even longer. But the nervous system itself in your brain, it can adapt pretty quickly. Enough repetition and load.
Yeah.
So instant functional change, amazing. And even less repetition over time in order to make that stick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why this is so powerful and why I love it is because it, as we said, like it gives you that open window that now you can solidify the gains that you're looking at. It's kind of like that difference between mobility and flexibility. It's like you can stretch out and you'll feel flexible for a moment, but then you go back and you sit for an hour and you're going to go back into that normal state. Can you own that mobility after time? Like that's a completely different thing that we're talking about. So adding it into flow, because now you use this system and now create more flow state. So with flow, I mean, for anybody that doesn't really know that term, how would you define like flow state and getting into flow?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. A flow state, there's not a like specific agreed upon definition as of yet, but the best that our scientific community has done is an altered state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. So another way to say that is it's our optimal state of consciousness, and it's those moments of complete absorption in a task. Some of the characteristics that show up are effortless effort. It feels easy. You are performing at a level that you may have not reached before. Time tends to, the proper term is time dilation, but time will change. It'll speed up in the case of like a nice conversation where an hour goes by in what seems like 5 minutes. It can also do the opposite and slow down into like a freeze frame type of effect. If you've ever been in like a car accident where you just like moment by moment, you remember everything. Right? That's also considered, a flow state. So effortless, it's selfless. You tend to have this feeling of in a bigger, or what we might call a macro flow state, as opposed to a micro flow state. The big flow states, we get that feeling of oneness, right? Where we blur the lines between action and awareness. And this is like a musician who becomes kind of one with their instrument. Or a surfer who becomes one with the wave, right? That merger of action and awareness is a hallmark characteristic of flow states. So these kind of things show up often in flow states, but at a basic level, it's our peak performance state of consciousness where everything feels easy and we are tapping into a level of performance not even available to us regular waking consciousness.
Is it possible to get into these states without having like some of those kind of higher consequences spot? Like we talk about surfing, well, you got a 50-foot wave behind you. Like it's kind of like, it's kind of like flow or die, where this is always personally, I found some challenges with like mindset based work or like flow state, where if you're doing it in a space where there's not a lot of consequences to do, it's almost more challenging to get into that, phase. So is that something that you work to implement with people, of like putting into a situation where you can get into it? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because here's like the golden rule of flow, that if you took one thing away from this conversation, implement this one tactic and you will start experiencing more flow in your life. And it's called the challenge skills balance. So if you put challenge on one side of this graph and skills on the bottom, your current skill level, the sweet spot for flow is right in the center. Okay. If anything becomes too challenging for your current skill level, you're going to experience anxiety. It's going to be too difficult. You're not going to like it. If you're surfing and you aren't skilled enough for a 50-foot wave, you're probably going to get hurt, right? That's not the best place to be. If you're too skilled for your challenge level, this is where boredom
Boredom,
sits.
yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be like, whatever. This is, don't care about it. I'm not being challenged. We need to find that flow channel right in the center. So any state, the great thing about this is that you can experience flow no matter your experience level and with anything that you do. If you can tune that challenge skills balance just enough to where you are reaching just a little bit. And the golden rule here, or the number that kind of keeps coming up in flow research, is 4%. So if you can push yourself just 4% harder beyond your current skill level, just get outside of your comfort zone just a little bit, you're going to trigger this flood of neurochemicals that are going to cause you to focus, tune in, let everything else drop out, and just really hone in on that. And you're going to be much better primed for experiencing flow. Now, flow states themselves, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, like they land on a spectrum to where you can have a micro flow state where, you know, you batch your emails maybe at the end of the day, which is what I like to do. I like to really batch tasks so I can focus fully on one thing at a time. And let's say I got an email that I got to write to a colleague or something, and it should take me 3 minutes, but I just like start going and I think about this thing and I'm like, oh yeah, then this, oh, and then I can tell about this. And all of a sudden, like 30 minutes go by. I'm like, oh, damn, right. That's a good looking email. I found myself in just like a little bit of a flow state.
Yeah.
Right. And then we can have all the way at the end of the other end of that spectrum, a macro flow state, which is, these are traditionally known as like spiritual experiences, mystical type experiences where you have that oneness and you're just like in another world, right? And anything in between. So the surfer that's skilled enough, but maybe has never done the 50-foot wave before, maybe he's done a 40-foot wave. So it's outside of his current skill level, but he drops his cojones and goes for it. Like, yeah, that's ripe for flow, for straight up survival purposes.
Right.
But also the beginner who has never surfed in their life and is out there the first day and tries and tries and tries, struggles, but keeps at it. And then eventually, like, it clicks and they pop up, they're going to drop into flow just as well. It may not be as intense of an experience. The intensity might be lower, but they're still going to have a massively enjoyable experience, right? And they're going to learn a lot faster when you get into a flow state. Learning is intensely increased when we can find flow.
Yeah.
So both are super beneficial, and you can have it at any end of that spectrum. And it even goes into other realms of life, we might say. Most people can find flow pretty easily in what we would call leisure activities, like hobbies, sports, stuff that we would do just for the sake of doing it, right? That's kind of a defining characteristic of flow, is that it's autotelic in nature, which is kind of a Greek term for an end in itself. We would do it just for the love of doing it. We don't need any rewards, no external. We got the intrinsic drive to just go out and do it. That's easy to do in leisure activities because we get to choose those. We have the autonomy to do it, to chase mastery, all that. It can be more difficult in work activities, but work is ripe for flow. And that's where I spend a lot of my time coaching people, is finding it, like transferring that feeling and that state from the stuff you love doing into your work life. And tuning those dials so you find it more at work, so you have more enjoyment, way more productivity, like you just launch your career to the next level.
Right.
But one other area that's overlooked and that is ripe for flow is maintenance activities. Washing the dishes, doing your laundry. Like, walking the dogs, any of these little, I mean, working out, a lot of people see that as a maintenance activity, right? It's not really their hobby. They may not enjoy it like you and I might enjoy it and see the value and in the progress and
Hmm.
chase. A lot of people just like got to do it. It's like,
Right.
ugh,
Right.
right? But that is ripe for flow.
Yeah.
And the more flow you find, the more enjoyment you get out of it, the more progress you see. It just becomes this perpetuating cycle because
Hmm.
flow begets flow. So if you can start turning that wheel,
Hmm.
right, and getting that positive feedback loop going, it just spirals upward.
Yeah. I love that. I love the breakdown that you had of skill versus just like that balance equation right there of just
Yeah,
like that's
challenge and
yeah, the
skill.
scallon and chill because you can you can apply that to anything. I've seen that in work that I've done. Like if I know something's gonna take 30 minutes, I'll naturally be like, can I do this in 20? Like it's just because
Yeah,
that's a little bit more of a challenge of
perfect.
a skill to do of just and it
Yeah.
puts it in there. I've just listened to like a Huberman podcast. He talked about why he loves deadlines on that because it's kind of you're putting yourself into a flow state. And I was thinking naturally we
Mm-hmm.
do this with like with children as we raise them. Like you'll
Mm-hmm.
naturally talk to a child at a slightly elevated level of speech that they
Mm-hmm.
have. Like if they're just learning to speech, you'll kind of speak in some sentences, but almost like just naturally you'll speak at a little bit higher level with them to force them to kind of comprehend. We just do that naturally as humans with there. And then I
Yeah.
was thinking like these are all like the stories that we love of like sports games and stuff you see. Like if you see a high school team play the San Francisco 49ers, like that's not fun, right? Because like the
Yeah.
skill's way too different. But you see a poor team play the top team and the poor team elevates over the underdog team. We love seeing that. Like it's a different
Yeah.
type of flow that we see. So I think we can all kind of understand that challenge for skill aspect of it. That's a beautiful way of putting that into whether it's a physical pursuit that you're doing or a mental pursuit that you're doing, where it's not something that's really in the body, but it's something that's more in the mind that it's that little bit extra challenge of where your skills at that's going to push you forward. And I can just speak from the experience. I think anybody listening can do too. Like when you get in that state where you're humming along and you're progressing in what you're doing, that is such an amazing feeling that you do. And everybody's like, "Oh, I wish I
Mm-hmm.
felt like this all the time." It's like, well, you can with the right skills and just work on it every day.
Yeah. You can experience it way more than most people do on a daily basis. But one thing to note there is that I've been I've actually been approached before by somebody who was like, "Oh man, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm in flow all day, every day." And my response is like, "Well, okay, you should probably take your medication then, because you might be in a manic state all the time or
Yeah.
schizophrenic. Like, it's it's not
You
it's
need
not a
some yin and
binary
yang.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You can't be in flow all the time because it's a really energy demanding state.
Hmm.
Like it takes a lot. It feels effortless, but you're expending a lot of energy, right?
Sure.
And it's good to know that, flow is not binary. It's not on or off. It happens in a cycle.
Hmm.
And the first stage of that cycle is probably the most important and where
Hmm.
most people have trouble and where they quit because this is the toughest stage. It's called struggle because it is exactly that. It's frustrating. It's a struggle. You're expending a lot of energy trying to crank up those neurochemicals to drive your attention. You're trying to gather information. You're trying to learn the things you need to know. And then you'll get to a point where you actually, Kotler has done some work recently. This year, they put out a paper about the first few seconds of flow and what happens there. And one of the things that they postulated, I don't know if they proved this or not, but his hypothesis was like you actually trigger a fight response at the end of that struggle phase, and that can be what kind of clicks to drive enough of those neurochemicals like
Hmm.
dopamine, norepinephrine, adrenaline into the brain to give you that focus to drop you into flow. Most people, I mean, we live in a society of comfort, right? Most people don't make it past the point of struggle to even allow them to get to the other side. So most people quit there. So the second stage before flow is the third stage. So we got struggle. The second is release. And this is an interesting stage because this is where the inspiration paradox lives. This is where we take all of that struggle and that frustration we've been like working with, trying to learn something, trying to figure out how to do something, and we let it go. Best way to do this is to like get in your body, get out of your head, get into your body, go for a long walk, like jump in the shower, right? How many great ideas do we have in the shower? All the time, right? Go for like a low grade short workout. Doesn't have to be intense, and it shouldn't be. You're just trying to get out of your mind and into your body. The term for this is actually called transient hypofrontality. Shut down this part of your brain. Let your subconscious take over. It's going to make the connections that you need to make. And then when you come back, it doesn't have to be long, 5-10 minutes. You come back, boom, drop right into flow. So the last stage of this is recovery. You just expended a boatload of energy, right? And then you need to recover. And the general time frame for this, it works on what are called ultradian cycles. So we know of circadian cycles, right? Like your diurnal daily rhythm.
Right.
Everybody's familiar with infradian cycles, they're called. These are longer cycles, like the cycles of the moon, menstrual cycle, the 17-year cycle of the cicadas, down in the south and out here. Those are long cycles, but ultradian cycles are very short. Think sleep cycle, right?
Right, like 90-minute cycles.
Yeah, 90 to 120 minutes is around the average, where we have these certain like biorhythms that happen, where we have some peaks in energy and little troughs. So a flow state generally can fit well in that cycle, where it's like struggle, 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 release, flow, and then recover. And we can start again. So long way to say that, you know, flow, we can have a lot more of it. Not really feasible to be in it all the time, and you probably wouldn't want to be. But if we can learn, and this is where, you know, what I call the neuro flow method, which is kind of my coaching program and style, where we use like applied neurological training and everything that comes within that, which is like your nutrition, your sleep habits, your hydration, your physical fitness levels. We are creating the opportunity for you to have the capacity and the energy to find that peak performance state of flow more often and more predictably. So we use applied neurological training to balance out your brain and body, optimize their function, right? Give you the tools that you need to regulate your own nervous system so you can better surf those biorhythms and find those optimal states of consciousness on demand when you need them the most, right? And also, you know, just give you more enjoyment in like the little things in life. So
yeah, I think that's power. What you said, it's like it's giving the tools of it, and it's not something that you need to find and then you're in it for all time. You know, that's something I think we all want. It's like, oh, we want it to be easier at this point. It's like if you want to get stronger, you want to get fitter, and you think like, oh, is this going to get easier? It's like, well, no, as soon as it gets easier, you're going to increase the load and you're going to keep pushing it because you're getting stronger and stronger. You have those tools available for you. But that spectrum that you talked about with flow is so powerful, because you can see like one flow like being in a game or doing something very physical and demanding. But then there's the other one, which is more of kind of like that oneness, as you said, that spiritual feel. So I've done a lot of float tank work before, and that's a place where you can get kind of that feeling of flow going in. You kind of drop into it. But it is, Brendan, like all of a sudden you feel like you're in that flow, and immediately you almost like kind of freak out because you're in that flow, and then you get out of it. It's like, so releasing it and kind of letting go, that second stage that you talked about, is so important. And I think it is, like you said, like this is stuff that it takes practice to do. And the more you can practice it, like the more you can access it when you need to, and have that diagram of skills versus challenges and work there. So it's powerful. I think we talked about this before we recorded, but I said there's a big population of people who I think are past that level where they've achieved a lot of things. They've got through that beginner phase of what they're doing and almost feel stuck of what's next. Like, what's the next level? You succeeded in reaching your health goals or your mindset, you're in a good mindset or your entrepreneurial goals and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, what's next? The things that you did at the beginning stages might not work as much anymore. You need to go to a next level. Or if you need to go to a next level, then you need to look at things a little bit different. And often it's looking at what's going on in the brain, what's going on in these states. And if you can access these, then this is the next venture to get to. So if you're in that advanced beginner stage and you kind of bypassed it, awesome. Congratulations. You've graduated. Now we need to go into another level here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such a huge opportunity when you start working with the brain and nervous system intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
We're all doing it, right?
Right.
We just don't know if we're doing it with intent. Are we assessing and making sure that the brain and the nervous system are responding to these things positively or not, right? Most of the time we're not. We're just kind of doing what we've known.
Yeah.
And those higher level systems, if you can really look at your brain and see how it's functioning on a moment to moment basis and have the tools to change that in an instant, right? That right there is worth more than, its weight in gold. Like it's so powerful. Just a quick example for one of my high level executive clients who, has experienced and just pushed through chronic pain because it's like, it's no big deal. I've had it forever. It's just this little ache, right? But what he didn't understand was that little distraction is enough to keep you from putting all of your focus and attention on the task at hand and getting into flow. It's literally blocking you from flow. Just that little thing. Every time you twinge, you're like, ah, how annoying, this little pain, it's stopping you. So he was also having some like performance anxiety. So like next time you have to go into a board meeting or something where you're getting a little amped up, getting a little anxiety, whatever, do this one visual drill, like right here. We tested it, worked brilliantly for him. Do this one little drill, a little bit of breath work. His nervous system just went pain gone, zoned in. That 10 seconds of work could make the difference between closing a major deal and missing it. Just the tiniest little thing. And they're so easy and so powerful. We just don't know about them. We're just not exposed to them yet. Which, I mean, it's coming. It's coming. But for now, if you can start to dive into that world a little bit, the opportunities for progress and advancement in your own health and fitness and cognitive performance and everything else is just, it's huge how much you can expand and get better. And then you add in the knowledge and the tools in order to find flow more often, and you're really like cooking with gas. So
I love it. Brandon Day, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you, man. I love this conversation. I love the work that you're doing with this. So I really appreciate you talking to me today. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. This was fantastic. I had a great time.
Absolutely. Yeah. If people want to know more about NeuroFlow Method, about the work that you're doing, what's the best place that we can send people?
Yeah, you can check me out on Instagram. It's a NeuroFlow Coaching on IG, and you can download a quick little, like the 6 non-negotiables, little cheat sheet over at guide.neuroflowcoaching.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a quick little, it's not anything wild and crazy, right? But if you can start implementing these 6, call them like the flow hygiene principles, you'll start experiencing more. So that's a good place to check these out. Hit me up on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. But
love it. Awesome. So guys, check the show notes for that. Brandon Day, thank you so much, man. Listeners, thank you so much for connecting. I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, peace.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.